I'm Jason Leary, the Ag Technology Manager at Crystal Valley. For this video segment, we are going to talk about the top yield factors that we found that affected the 2020 corn yield. So as we look at top factors as we ranked them that we found on our research farms, nitrogen rate was by far number one. We've got some studies we'll touch on to show that, but on average there's about a 45 bushel response to nitrogen rate. Hybrid selection had about a 30 bushel response this year. We look at sulfur rate, planting date, and nitrogen timing were all big factors. And then we also, in-furrow starter and fertility made our top list as well. So if you look at the map that's up now to put this nitrogen rate for a visual, the blue box on the east half of the field had a high rate of nitrogen on it. So this was 250 pounds corn on corn. The black box on the west half of the field was 220 pounds of nitrogen. So there's about 10 gallons of 32, that was the difference here. And very visual, drastic difference where we cut out that 30 pounds of nitrogen. There's about 25 bushel an acre difference in this field for taking out that 30 pounds of nitrogen. And on a normal year, we'd think that 220 pounds of applied nitrogen would be enough for corn on corn. The environmental factors that we had this year, and I think leading up to this year, we think back to the fall of 2019, tillage was late and wet, so we didn't have much residue breakdown last year, so residue tied up a lot of our N this year. So we really relied upon that N that we applied this year for this crop. Looking at another nitrogen study that we had, we're looking at nitrogen programs along with application types. So what we did in this study is we had the same base of 140 pounds of nitrogen across the whole field, and then we added in different nitrogen timing and rates throughout the study. So that first graph there, we added 35 pounds of nitrogen with a planter. So going from 140 pounds up to 175 pounds of N, we picked up 25 bushels an acre. So a huge yield bump for 30 pounds of nitrogen that we had there. And as we add nitrogen again, the next study we actually took the planter nitrogen and moved it to a Y-drop application. Picked up the same 25 bushels. We didn't gain any more or less, so it didn't matter if it was an early Y-drop or at planting. We still picked up that 25 bushels. But later on what we did is we did 10 gallons with the planter and then another 10 gallons of Y-drop. So we added 70 pounds of nitrogen. We picked up an additional 11 bushels. And then we looked at moving all to a Y-drop application instead of with a planter. So we moved that 70 pounds of nitrogen all to a Y-drop, and we pick up an additional 6 bushels by doing that. And then that last graph there, we do the planter N with 35 pounds and then Y-drop to 70 pounds additional N. So that's our total N's over 200 pounds or 250 pounds, but we had our highest yield there. So if we look at those top graph lines, very linear, the more N that we add, we had a direct correlation to yield. This next study was a nitrogen timing. So we had a customer that we did a couple different rates of urea, and then we tied in a Y-drop application. So as we look at that chart, the first block we did was 140 pounds of nitrogen with urea, all by itself. Then we had a high rate of urea, where we did 180 pounds of nitrogen, and then we add in the Y-drop to that. So we had a block where we did 140 pounds of nitrogen up front with urea, moved 40 pounds into a Y-drop application, and then we had one where we did the high rate of urea plus a Y-drop. As we look at those yield results, this was a very high yield environment, but we had 33 bushel increase by adding that first 40 pounds of nitrogen, going from 140 up to 180. And then just by moving 40 pounds of nitrogen in season to a Y-drop, we picked up 7 bushels an acre for the same total N. And right now, with the way urea and 32% is priced per pound of N, there's not much difference. So really our only cost to do that would be about 10 bucks an acre for a Y-drop application. And we picked up 7 bushels an acre. There's quite a bit of ROI there to move 40, 50 pounds to an in-season application. And as we increased more in on top of that, so we did the high rate of urea plus the Y drop, we picked up an extra 4 bushels, but there we're starting to plateau with our yield response curve. Here's just a couple of pictures of what that in-season application looks like. We've got Y drop machines on a Hagee going through corn that's about waist to chest high. Another study that we had that made our top list for yield factors was sulfur. This was a study with corn on corn, and we did different sulfur products and then different rates to see what the effect was going to be. So the field started out, we had 10 pounds of sulfur as our base, and we came in with a couple different products that we Y dropped and then some foliar products as well, adding an additional 10 pounds and an additional 20 pounds to that field. Some very nice yield correlations there as well. We picked up anywhere from 8 to 16 bushels by adding that additional sulfur onto those fields. So this year, sulfur and nitrogen both very crucial to some top end yield. All right, so here's 2 videos we have doing that sulfur trial. This first video is where we're using a Y drop to apply the liquid sulfur. The second video then is going to be a foliar application of sulfur. So we're using the same rig, we just tie up the Y drops and switch to spray nozzles. You can see that application here. Another big factor that made our list this year was hybrid selection. With our replicated plots, we had about 25 hybrids that we tested across our area. We put all those plots together. We had about a 30 bushel spread from the top hybrid to the bottom hybrid. So hybrids are very important yet. We look at a 30 bushel decision, genetic package, making sure you're getting the right hybrid placed correctly at the right population has a big yield impact. So with hybrid selection, another important decision to look at is relative maturity. We've been looking at this for a number of years. And we look at 2020 as no exception. The graph that you're going to see now is all of our replicated plot data by relative maturity. And there are some outliers in there. You know, we had a really good 106 day and there's a 104 day that stand out. But as you look at the trend line, we pick up about 1.5 bushels per maturity level that you go up. So example, if you go from a 95 day corn up to a 105 day, just looking at this trend line data, pick up about 15 bushels an acre. That does come with moisture. So we're about 0.4 of a point of moisture increase per RM as well. So you take that same 95 to 105 day corn, you pick up about 4% moisture. Using current commercial drying rates, you know, we still, with the increased yield and increased moisture, there's still about $15 to $20 an acre ROI by going to a later day corn. So, you know, we need to spread out risk and, you know, plant different hybrids, but we've definitely seen some yield increase by going to some top end yield by going to a later day corn. The last factor that made our list this year is soil fertility, and with that mainly starter fertilizer we saw this year. With early planting dates, colder soil temps, in-furrow starters had a nice response this year. These pictures you're looking at now are was 624-6 with zinc applied in-furrow at 5 gallons an acre. Very nice visual. We ended up being between 3 and 6 bushel an acre, depending on the hybrid that we saw with that this year. So the last thing that we did that was new for 2020 is we added some high management strips, high yield environments. We wanted to push the limits and really see what top end yield we could achieve. So we had 2 different sites, one in Nicollet and one at Farm America, where we poured the kitchen sink out of this crop. We had multiple Y drop passes, fungicide, micros, biologicals that we put on these strips. We learned a lot. We're going to continue this into 2021. If we look at those 2 sites, what we really saw the visual impact that these high yield environments had when we managed them. You look at that picture there now, it's very easy to see where this high management strip was at. The yield response we saw this year was big too. At Nicollet, we picked up about 35 bushels an acre. And there, our inputs weren't quite as much. It was more of a realistic nitrogen, sulfur, fungicide program. So at 35 bushels an acre, with the input cost that we had, we still netted about $75 an acre in ROI. The Farm America site, we picked up 45 bushels an acre, so very nice yield increase. However, that did not offset the input cost that we had into that site. So we lost, figuring $4 corn, we lost about $8 an acre on that trial. But for us on the agronomy side, to pull a 44 bushel an acre increase is pretty drastic, and I think there's a lot to learn from that. So as we look at going into 2021, we're going to increase these high management areas. We're going to add a few more of them, add some more hybrids to them, and try to keep the management level something that's realistic that can be implemented in the future. That wraps up what we had for factors that affected the 2020 corn yield. Stay tuned for more videos.